Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on your fellowship this morning. Um, there's a couple things that I've learned by being around the program, and this program saved my life. It's given me life, and it gives me purpose in my life. And I usually don't say no if someone asks me to do something in this program. I think it's my obligation to give back to the program that saved my life and saves many, many other lives. So it's an honor to be here. I always like to say, if my time slot's open, it's yours. And this time slot was open, and it's yours. So I'm privileged to be here. So I guess I'm speaking on love and true tolerance. Essentially, in a nutshell, what is the program? It's a program that teaches me how to bring love to myself and others and practice true tolerance. The steps are the way to that. In the book, it tells me I could have moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I could not live up to them, even though I would like to. I could want to be a different man. I could want to be all these different things. And I wanted to through my active addiction. And even while I wasn't using, I wanted to be the man that I wanted to be inside, but my actions were showing that I was being something else. So I was really conflicted with who I was and what was being delivered outside of me through my actions and behaviors. And I didn't know how to change that. And what I've learned through this program, I sponsor many men in this program. And I'm not going to say this out of pride and ego. I'm going to say this so that it brings value to my experience and what I say tonight. I've sponsored 250, 300 men in this program, and I've seen a few things through my sponsorship. And then I've experienced my own life through the literature of the book. And I've come to some conclusions, or at least some beliefs as of today, of what I see that works in this program and what I see that doesn't work in this program. There's a clear cut of directions here in this book. And right in the forward to the first edition, Bill lays it out, to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered. It's the main purpose of this book. So right off the bat, it's telling me if I follow these directions precisely, I'm going to recover from the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. But you know what? If I'm only going to recover from a hopeless state of mind and body, I'm settling for breadcrumbs. Because this book shows me how to recover from the real problem. It tells me that the alcohol and the drugs are just a symptom. The bottle is a symptom. And if I keep on the way I'm going, the surface would hardly be scratched, telling me again that this is not about the alcohol. It tells me right in step 3, where it talks about the actor. It tells me selfish self-centeredness, that we believe is the root of our troubles. That is what I found to be the root of my troubles. But I came here because I was addicted to drugs and alcohol. That's why I came here. I didn't come here because I thought I was selfish. I didn't come here to build a fellowship. I didn't come here for any other reason than I didn't like who I was. I couldn't stop putting drugs in my body, and I had nowhere else to go. If I had one more place to go, I would have gone there. But I was finally crushed by a self-imposed crisis that I could no longer postpone or evade. I had to fearlessly face the proposition that either this God thing was everything or it was nothing. I didn't think it was really everything, but I really had nowhere else to go. I had nowhere else to go. So I had to concede and try this thing. And I remember when I first started going through the book with my sponsor, I didn't like going through the book. I didn't like the fact that I had to be meeting him once a week. I didn't like the fact that it said God in here. I didn't like that it said I was going to be launched into a fourth dimension of existence, which I thought was a load of bullcrap. I didn't believe what that said. I thought it was a selling feature of this book to try to make me think the spiritual life was going to do some miraculous thing. I didn't like the line where it said we were reborn. I thought it was all bullshit. But I had nowhere to go. I had tried everything else. And I was crushed by drug and alcohol addiction, backed into a corner. And I had to fearlessly face this proposition that this God thing was maybe going to help me or he wasn't. So I did what I was told to do. And I met my sponsor every week on Wednesday at a coffee shop in downtown Calgary. And I just did what I was told to do. So I got through my first set of steps. I remember doing my step 4 the first time through. And I've always thought I was this certain kind of guy. I always thought I was kind and I was caring. And, I knew I had a little bit of an anger problem. I knew I had a little bit of a lust problem probably. But I didn't really think anything was that bad. I thought, I didn't think much of it. I knew I had a bit of a work problem. I worked 7 days a week. I knew I had some problems, but I thought these were personality traits. And then I did my step 4 and I looked at the 4th column. And I was like, holy shit. I'm actually not the person that I think I am. And then I did my fears list. And out of the 50 fears that I wrote down, I realized 40 of those fears were made up in my head. But they drove 90 to 95% of my decisions in my life. So I'm living my life on fears that aren't even real. And it's driving my life, which is where it says in the book, selfish self-centeredness is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear and self-delusion. It tells me right in the book that I'm going to be driven by fear and self-delusion, lies that I tell myself. Self-seeking, self-pity, resentments drive me. These things all drive me. And then the other 10 fears that I had, I looked at and I'm like, oh, those fears are actually fears that are good for me. They help me stay alive. And then I looked at my sex conduct. And I realized through my whole life, I thought I was a kind, caring, loving, giving, compassionate, all these qualities. But I realized at the end of my sex conduct that I never really had a relationship with anybody except myself. Why? Because I was so self-centered that everything was always about me. So once I was done writing that out, and I did my step 5 right after, because in step 3 it said we launched on a course of vigorous action. The first of which was a personal house cleaning, in which many of us had never attempted. Though this decision, the step 3 decision, was a vital and crucial step. It's vital. Vital means giving of life. And I don't mean, staying alive is one thing, but I want to live. So it's a vital and crucial step. Crucial means like mandatory. And step 3 will have little permanent effect unless at once I follow it up by step 4. And why am I doing this step actually? I'm doing the step because I need to clear the channel of the things within me that block me from God. But through the realization of what and who I really was in the 4 and 5, it blew my mind. I was mind blown because I was looking on paper at a different person than I thought I was. So the truth really started hurting me. And my sponsor was showing me the harms that my selfishness, self-centeredness had done. But the funny thing that hid all this, underneath the surface was my motive of selfishness, self-seeking, resentment, self-pity. But on the surface, I was always driven by what my intention was. Because I always wanted to be nice. And I was doing these things I thought for the right reason. So my intentions were good. But the motive underneath the intention wasn't always good. And I didn't understand that for about the first year of this program. So then I get through the rest of my steps. Fast forward, I get through the rest of my steps. I didn't really understand what step 10 was. I didn't, I thought I knew what step 11 was, and it was prayer and meditation, and I tried my best at both of those things. But the one thing I did know I was doing correctly was I was doing the 12th step. I really wanted to practice the principles in my affairs. I had had somewhat of a spiritual awakening. I was changing. And I started carrying the message to other alcoholics. As soon as I was done my steps, at about 6 months in, I started chairing meetings. And I started sponsoring other men. In the back of the book on the chapter, or on the spiritual experience on page 567, it says, what had happened in a few months could not have happened in years of me trying on my own. So what it's telling me is there's a timeline to going through the material. There's a few months, it says. So what happened in a few months to me couldn't have happened by years of me trying on my own. And when I look at my own life, yeah, I tried to change my character. I tried to build my character. And I could have these moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I could not live up to them, even though I wanted to. But as I went through the steps, I slowly, one little awakening at a time, I started seeing the truth. And I started trying something different. In the beginning of the book, and there's a solution, there's a story, and it's called A Certain American Businessman, and it's in there as a solution. And the certain American businessman is Roland Hazard. We're all Roland Hazard. He's a hopeless, defeated alcoholic who got a lot of self-knowledge from Carl Jung, the psychiatrist. But he left Carl Jung, and within a short time he was drunk. And he was baffled. And he said to Carl Jung, how did I get drunk, doctor? I know all this stuff. I just spent a year with you. How did I get drunk? And the doctor is telling Carl, you're a hopeless alcoholic. I've never seen one single case recover to the extent that this disease has with you. And Roland says to Carl Jung, he's like, is there anything, please? I'm like begging you. And Carl's like, I don't know. There's not much hope for you, Roland. And he says, but I have heard of this thing. It's a phenomenon to me. It's called what we call a vital spiritual experience. Every now and then, men will have what they call a vital spiritual experience. And how does the doctor describe it to Roland? Well, he says this. He says, ideas, emotions, and attitudes that were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men had to suddenly be cast aside and allow a whole new set of conceptions to dominate them. Well, what are we talking about? We're talking about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. What this program does is it gets down deep into my old ideas, emotions, and attitudes that drive me, my fears, my resentments, my behaviors. And it exposes these things and it brings them to the surface as long as I'm willing to bring these things to the surface. And that happens in the step 4 and 5 and 6 and step 10. It allows these things to come if I'm looking for them. It also talks in Bill's story, I asked my Heavenly Father to remove these things root and branch. The branches are easy to see. The branches are my defects of character that cause me all my difficulties in life. And a lot of times I can see the branches because they stick me right in the eye every day. They cause me and they cause you pain a lot. So I can see these basic character flaws pretty easily a lot of the times. But I don't know where the root of these things is. And over time, we can expose the roots. So these ideas, emotions, and attitudes are kind of what I got to dig into. The backbone of this program for me is step 6 and 7. But I have to do the work in step 4 and 5, and it's continual work. But I learn genuine humility by trying to practice what step 6 is. So I'm going to talk about the step 3 prayer for a minute. Because the step 3 prayer kind of says a lot of what I need to talk about today. So before the step 3 prayer, it talks about the actor who wants to run the whole show. If everyone would just do as I wanted, we'd all be happy. Because I want to arrange the lights, the camera, the ballet, and the rest of the players all in my own way. And it doesn't even say that I'm the director. It says I'm an actor. I'm just another person trying to control everybody's life. But the show doesn't come off very well. And then I get more upset and I start thinking that life's not treating me right. So underneath the surface in me, I start acting out. I start trying to control more. I start trying to manipulate more. I call it mind and emotional manipulation or mind and emotional blackmail. I'm trying to use little tactics like anger, like indignancy, I'm trying to guilt you into giving me what I think it is I need. And I'll do this in many different ways. And everybody has their own defects that they use. And I have mine. So I had to find out what they were. There's another line in the step 3, and it talks about, to me, this is the most important delusion in the big book. I know that us in meetings, we all come here and we're all worried about the substance. And we all talk about the substance. And I have to smash the delusion that I can ever safely drink or use drugs ever again. That delusion has to be smashed. Yeah, it does. Well, that's exactly what the book is about. It'll enable me to find a power greater than myself that will solve my problem. And it helps smash that delusion. But that's not the most important delusion I need to smash. But I think it is. And it is when I first get here. It really is. But if I want to live a life and I want to live happy and free of bondage of self, and I never want to fucking drink again, excuse my language, I'll try to watch it, but sometimes I slip. And if I never want to drink again, there's another delusion that I must understand. And it's not very much talked about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, or in the meetings, or anywhere. But to me, it's the most important part of this program. And it's the delusion on page 62. Is he not really a self-seeker even when he's trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest happiness and satisfaction out of this world if he only manages well? That is the delusion. If I smash that delusion, I am implementing step 3 in my life. And I am implementing step 7 in my life. So I'm going to reread that. Am I not a victim? And when you look up the word victim, it means tricked or duped. Yeah, I've been tricked. I'm tricked into a delusion, into a lie that I can rest. And rest is spelled W-R-E-S-T, which means pry, which means grab, which means snatch and take out of life. Happiness and satisfaction, if I only manage it well. If you only do what I want you to do, if I only have the right job, if I only have the right amount of money, if I only have the right woman, if I only have everything just the way I want it, I'm going to be happy and satisfied. No, I've been tricked into this delusion. Society taught me that. I watch that on TV. I watch what happens on TV. If I have that boat, if I have that car, if I have that woman, if I have that job and I get the status, I'm gonna be like that guy on TV. Or I'm gonna be something and it's gonna make me happy. No. People tell me that. The billboards tell me that. The radio tells me that. Yeah, I've been tricked. I was tricked for many years. I built a company that was making $3 million a year because I didn't understand I had a spiritual malady. I had a hole inside of me that I tried to fill from everything outside of me because I was a victim of this delusion, of this lie. And no matter how many boats I bought, no matter how much money I made, no matter how big my house was, no matter how much equipment I had for my company, all that did was give me relief. And I'm a relief seeker. And the shine always wore off. The shine always wore off. In step 7, in the 12 and 12, there's a line there. It says, never was there enough of what we thought we wanted. My crippling handicap was character building and spiritual values have to come first. I didn't know that. I thought things that I wanted for me had to come first. Character building I'd get to later. Once I had what I needed, I'll get to character building. Once my life's in order, I'll help the homeless people. Once my life's in order, I'll send money to the homeless kids in Africa. I always wanted to do those things, but I needed to take care of me first. So I didn't understand until I lost it all. And I lost it all. I lost my business that I built for 15 years. I lost every penny that I had. I lost my wife and I lost my kids. And I lost my self-respect. And I lost whoever I thought I was. I was sitting in the middle of a pile of material blessings, had nothing left, wondering, who the hell are you? And then I came here. And I learned who I was. And I continue to learn who I am. And I can tell you today that I don't need anything from outside of me to fulfill who is Bill Ward today. Because I know who I am. Because I've spent a lot of work in this program building character. And character building and spiritual values today have to come first. Material blessings are not the purpose of living. What material blessings are for me today, they are tools to help me do my real job. And my real job, as I'm going to read here, is I need to go to work for my Creator or God. And my God started out as my passed away grandmother. She is the center of my God. And from that center nucleus of my God, I have universe, I have nature, I have other things comprise what my God is. And I don't really know what it is, but I know that it's powerful. So yes, I'm powerless, but I'm not powerless anymore if I access the power. And that power is out here and it's in me. So I'm going to read the step 3 prayer. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee. I'm offering. I'm just offering here. That's it. I haven't given myself to God at all here. It's a launching pad. And I'm asking him to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. I'm asking God to build with me, do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, because I am the problem. I am tied to myself. I have so much in me on top of me, I need to be relieved of me. It tells me selfish self-centeredness is the root of my troubles. And once I go through the work, this prayer actually makes sense. It will make sense later. And I think it made sense when I first did it. But it made sense, I guess, at the time when I first did it to the extent that it needed to. But I understood this prayer way further later on in my recovery. That I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties. My difficulties are my defects of character that cause all my difficulties. My difficulties are the manifestation of self that cause my difficulties in my life. That victory over them may bear witness to those I would help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. So victory over them. It's telling me there's a fight. I got to fight these difficulties, these defects of character. These defects of character are the ideas, emotions, and attitudes that have been the guiding forces of my life that I need to suddenly cast aside and allow a whole new set of conceptions to dominate me. Back in the doctor's opinion, it talks about we're restless, irritable, and discontented. Until again, we experience the ease and comfort that comes at once by taking the first few drinks. So I have a spiritual malady, and I'm restless, irritable, and discontented. And the only thing that soothes that is the drink. The problem with me is I put it into my body and I go on the spree. And I need a full psychic change. And the doctor writes, unless I have a full psychic change, there is very little hope of my recovery. I need a psychic change. And that is what we're talking about. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, the way that I think, need to be cast aside. And I need to change my psyche. I need to change the way that I think and look at life. I need to have a profound alteration in my viewing of the way I look at life. And that is what take away my difficulties, so that victory over them may bear witness to those I will help of thy power, thy way of life. So there's a fight here. And understanding step 6. Step 6 is where I actually surrender, where I'm actually learning how to surrender and give my will over to God. And it's not an easy process. It's very difficult. In the book, in the 12 and 12, in step 10, it talks about the pains of drinking had to come before sobriety and inner turmoil before serenity. I have to go through this inner turmoil to change. And it's not a fun, easy process. But if, for me, I was willing to do whatever it took because I knew I did not want to use drugs again. And once I started changing, I started seeing the benefits. I started having some peace of mind. I started comprehending the word serenity, not mentally trying to intellectualize what serenity meant. I started comprehending the word serenity, like it says in step 9 promises. I started understanding what true freedom of the human spirit was. And I wanted more. I'm a drug addict, alcoholic. I want what makes me feel good. And the more that I was changing and the more that I sought God in my life, the more that I felt good and the more I wanted that. So I was willing to go through some more pain. Where is this fight that I'm talking about? Where does it actually happen? It actually happens in my step 10. Step 10 is a very mechanical process. And that is where the fight happens. The principle behind step 10 is perseverance. What does perseverance mean? It means to fight through. So I'm fighting through these difficulties so that victory over them will produce, what does it say in step 10? Love and tolerance of others is our code. By now we have ceased fighting anyone or anything, even alcohol. Because if I follow this program in its entirety, and I start understanding precisely the clear-cut directions of how to do this mechanically, as the book lays it out, how step 10 lays it out, I cease fighting anyone and anything, even alcohol. Why? Because the alcohol is not really the problem. So I'm not going to fight it. First of all, I need to quit fighting me. Because the biggest fight in my life is with me, inside here. This is alcoholism. And if I let this alcoholism wheel spin enough, then I'm picking up a drink or I'm putting a pipe in my mouth. So I need to stop this. And then if I stop this, I'm not going to be fighting you. And if I don't fight me or I don't fight you, then for sure I'm not going to fight alcohol. Why? What does it say in the step 10 promises? I'm placed in a position of neutrality. I'm safe and protected. I'm actually placing myself in the position of neutrality. Safe and protected in my own head. And then I'm placing myself in a position of neutrality within my fellows. I don't fight. I don't push. I'm not trying to pry and grab or take anything from you. I'm in a position of neutrality. And every day is a day where we must bring the vision of God's will into all of our activities. That is the essence of step 10. Step 10 teaches me how to do that minute by minute. I don't need to come to the program and work the steps and then go self-will the principles in my life and go pretend like I'm practicing the principles. There's a 5-step process of what step 10 is. The result of the 5-step process is a principle. It's like doing math. 1 + 2 + 3 + blah, 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 blah equals the number. Well, if I follow the process of what step 10 is, it equals a principle. It always equals the principle. But I got to understand what step 10 is. To me, the problem that I see, at least in Canada, where I live in Calgary, people think step 10 is I promptly admit when I'm wrong and I go make an amend. That's not what step 10 is. And I'm going to read what step 10 is here. And then I'm going to go back to step 6 for a second. So on page 84 in the big book, it says this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests, and I want to highlight in this paragraph, the word continue is 4 times and the word commenced is once. This is very important because this must continue every minute by minute of my life, because this is the step that gets me closer to God. This is the step that is the keys to the kingdom. This is the step to personality change. Step 10 is so important, and it's not what it says on the wall. When I implement the step in my day-to-day life, my life changes. Everything changes. Which suggests we continue to take personal inventory, and we continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We vigorously commenced this way of living. We have entered into the world of the Spirit. Yeah, this is the entering into the world of the Spirit step. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It must continue for our lifetime. Continue, here it is. This is step 10 in its entirety. First step of this, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. I got to be aware of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. If I'm not aware, then none of this shit works. I have to be aware as I go through my day's march out there of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And what am I watching for? I'm watching for my difficulties. What are my difficulties? My difficulties are my selfishness, my self-centeredness, my self-seeking. And it takes a while to kind of get this grained in your life. But this is the deal. I got to watch for me. And when I crop up, when these things crop up, the second step, which is the first solution step of this, says I ask God at once to remove it. Boom, I go to God. God's my first sponsor all the time. God, please help me. Please remove this defect. Please remove this resentment, this judgment, this fear. Please remove it from me right now. I always go to God first. This is why I'm stepping into the world of the Spirit, because I'm turning to God. I'm turning to God. I'm turning to God nonstop all day. And then the next step is we discuss it with someone immediately. So it talks about, I discuss this with somebody now. It doesn't say I wait. I discuss it with someone immediately. So I need to step away and pick up the phone and call my God-centered 12-step pillar. I need to call my sponsor, or I need to call somebody who's already centered in God, who's already done the steps. Why? What happens when I call them? Well, what does it say in step 4? It says in step 4 that I got to get down to causes and conditions. I got to look at the facts. I got to face the facts. I got to look at the truth about stock and trade. And one effort is to discover some damaged or unsaleable good and discard it without regret. So what happens when I pick up the phone? I'm talking to my sponsor. I tell him everything that's happening. I tell him the incident. I tell him the fear. I tell him the resentment. I tell him what just happened with somebody else. So we're looking at the facts. And now he helps me face the facts. And he helps me look at the truth about Bill, the truth about stock and trade, the truth about my situation. And it might be different than how I'm viewing it, because I'm always going to view it from self, because I'm the person in it. And sometimes when life hits me, I can't see self from self. I won't be able to see the problem with the problem. That's why the step is there. I call someone. So we look at the facts, we face the facts, we look at the truth. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, sponsor. And then it says one object is to find some damaged or unsaleable good and discard it without regret. So my sponsor says, you know what? I think you're acting in fear and resentment. And you owe this guy an amend. Where I was sure before I called him, I didn't owe him an amend. And I was in the right. But he showed me the truth. And then it says here, we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. So my sponsor says, so I want you to go make the amend. I want you to pray on the defect that you're acting out on. And I want you to pray for this man. Because you don't know what kind of day he's had or life he's had. And I think you were out of line, Bill. So then I hang up from my sponsor. I pray to God. I go over and I make the amend. And then I jump in my vehicle and I drive away and I pull over and I start praying for this man. I pray for his well-being, his happiness. And I ask God to help me with my defect. And then it says, love and tolerance of others is our code. That is the code. Well, what is love and tolerance? We know what love is. Well, what are the principles? As I followed this process in that made-up incident, at the end of that incident was a principle or many principles. Well, what was the principle at the end of it? It showed integrity because I took responsibility for my own actions and I made the amend. And through the amend, the principle behind the amend is justice. I gave the guy justice for my behavior. I was willing to make the amend, so I showed him brotherly love. So there was 3 principles there. And it showed my willingness to relinquish these things in step 6. And it showed faith because I was praying to God. There was many principles that were the result of the mechanics of what step 10 was. And love and tolerance of others is our code. And I want to give you a definition of what true tolerance is. And it's right here in the big book. And it's in the chapter, There's a Solution. And I think it's on page 23. Page 19. On the bottom of page 19, it says, most of us sense that real tolerance of other people's shortcomings and viewpoints and respect for their opinions are attitudes that make us more useful to others. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depends on our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. So what I need to learn, which wasn't easy, it took willingness and it took pain and it took mistakes, but I don't believe in mistakes if you're willing to change. Mistakes aren't mistakes if you're willing to change. What a mistake is, it's just a decision that you made that maybe didn't turn out that great, but if you're willing to learn from it, it's never a mistake. But if I continue to act in that defect and I continue to harm and cause pain to myself and others, then it's a mistake because I know better. Okay? So most of us sense the real tolerance of other people's shortcomings and viewpoints and respect for their opinions or attitudes that make us more useful to others. So love and tolerance of others is our code. It doesn't mean that I tolerate you. It means that I accept you. That you also have your own ideas, emotions, and attitudes that are the guiding forces of your life. And maybe you haven't ever been exposed to those things yet. And then so I start developing true compassion. So I'm going to sum it up here with the step 7 prayer. And then I'll be done. But I'm just going to compare the step 7 prayer to the step 3 prayer. So between step 3 and step 7, there's a whole bunch of work that needs to be done. And it's about exposing my old character and building new character. Step 6 says any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly to surrender. Step 6 has indeed come a long way spiritually. Step 6 is the step that I grow spiritually, but it's worked in step 10. And through those middle steps, I get to a surrender of God. Step 7 to me is ultimate surrender. And I'll explain it here and then I'll quit talking. When ready, we say something like this: my Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me. Much different than the step 3 prayer. Step 3 was I offer. Now at step 7, I am willing that you have all of me. Meaning I'm eager, God, for you. That you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray now that you remove every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go from here to do your bidding. And bidding means, when you look up the word bidding, means I now listen to you. You tell me what to do, God, and I'll do it for you. And then the only amen in the whole big book is right here. And it says amen. That means I stamp that with truth. I go from here to work for you, God. I am now surrendered. I am humbly on my knees, surrendered to you. Show me what you want me to do. And this program is not about getting happy. The program is about being of service to God and my fellows. It tells me in step 9, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and our fellows. Through the service of God and fellows, I become happy. I become satisfied. I become content. And life gets really good. So if you're new or you're struggling or you're coming back and you got a problem with drugs or alcohol, or you got a problem with life, you're in the right place. This is where we get her done. But we don't get her done by sitting on our butts doing nothing. There's some action here. Faith alone is insufficient. To be vital, to give life, it must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. And that is my experience. So I was honored to speak for you guys today. I'm very passionate, as you can see, because this program has changed my life. It's given me life, and it gives me purpose in my life every day. And if I can do anything to help any of you understand the literature or do anything to be helpful to this fellowship, I'm here. And I'm honored to speak for you today, and thank you very much.